some of the things I enjoy and love and appreciate about China. Today I want to talk a little bit. Oh, one more thing. Happy Dragon Boat Festival holiday this weekend. What I want to talk about today is how much I appreciate the opportunity or the accomplishments I've made here in China over the 8 years. Certainly when I came here, I didn't really sort of anticipate staying this long, or didn't really know what was in store in terms of even what the job entailed. As an ESL teacher, I was rather unfamiliar with what that meant. I had my certifications and I did my training for it. I had about a year's experience as an outdoor educator and team builder, and like I said in prior videos, I was interested in researching a film that I wanted to make about the Transcontinental Railroad. Did quite a bit of reading, studying about Chinese culture, and but I felt it necessary, kind of person wants to know for themselves. So about to trust the media or a lot of the reference materials I was using at that point. I wanted to kind of get my own eyes on the ground experience. But not being a person who likes to take advantage of opportunities or exploit them or milk them, I came over here with every intention of investing myself as an ESL teacher, and I kind of feel I've accomplished quite a bit as such in terms of being able to put lessons together and the confidence I can draw upon when I'm in a classroom, and certainly dealing with challenges that present themselves that I might not otherwise have been familiar with. I would say that came for me when it was suggested to use PPTs in the classroom. That gave me access to using some of my film production skills. And it actually kind of was a little bit of a revelation because, up to that point, filmmaking is kind of a passive audience, and I felt it was quite engaging to have that interaction with my audience suddenly. As a filmmaker, you just kind of make your expression and you put it out there, and it's sort of a private conversation. If there's any sort of return, or if there's any sort of response to it, it's kind of a private conversation. But here I was using, I had a classroom, so I had an actively engaged audience, and I was also an educator, so that also came into play. And I've learned pretty well, or I've learned a great deal about, drawing that line by saying, okay, this is really just entertainment at this point, or this is, I'm doing exercises that are based on education. So that's always been something that has kept me occupied, kept my interests in creating in this job, in this profession here in China. And if it wasn't for China, I don't think I would have had this opportunity. I didn't really see myself going to Japan. I didn't really see myself going to Korea or any of those countries at that point, or even like Italy or anything like that. I had done a lot of traveling prior to coming to China, and I was really at a point where I just kind of felt like I knew what I needed to know about a lot of things, and it was only being on the West Coast that China engaged my interests. Being from the East Coast, you're primarily your whole interaction with Asian culture really is based in sort of Japanese culture, and it wasn't until I went out west that I was really in sort of close proximity to Korean and the other Asian cultures. I want to say Oriental because I don't understand how that is offensive. I really, if anybody out there who can explain this to me, I'd appreciate it. Like, how is Oriental how is that offensive? You know, it seems actually quite flattering as much as I would say Lao Wei is. You know, it's like it has a dual sort of take on it. I mean, if you like, I had this. I wrote this in response to a video. The term Lao Wei, you know, it's something that is used. It can be used in a sincere form or in a derogatory form, because literally it means like old out, which would suggest that when China was starting to engage foreigners, they had no way of explaining where these people came from because China was the center of the universe, right? So what they did was they said, okay, this is somebody who left and came back. They're an old out. They left a long time ago and they came back, you know, which would suggest kind of a familiarity with each other, a familial kind of relationship, which is, you know, sincere. It's a nice kind of way of putting it, right? But over time, it's developed in sort of a derogatory term that would suggest probably closer to the N word, you know, if you're going to use it in a derogatory sense, it would probably have a lot of resemblance to the N-word in American culture towards black Americans, because it suggests you are somebody who contributes nothing to our community. You know, you don't give us any, you know, you're just kind of an interloper. It doesn't suggest that familial part of it isn't related to, you know. And that's the derogatory sense of it. But there is, you know, I do recognize a sincere form to it. So anyway, my point is that how is Oriental? Oriental, if you look at the word Orient, it means like origin, you know, a place where ideas or thoughts or something started, you know. So I would say that's like a flattering term, you know, just as much as Lao Wei perhaps was meant to be. So so I don't know where people are trying, other than just to say we are trying to sort of emphasize an influence on your ability to control your culture or control your perceptions, you know, and that's the most dangerous precedent, I think. That's the most dangerous sort of oppressive sort of idealism that I can think exists. It's it's subversion at its worst, you know. Because I would suggest that being an Oriental is quite flattering, you know. I mean, saying you're the Orient of things, you know, you're the beginning of things, you know, which would be a high form of flattery for a Western culture to suggest, you know, rather than its own. So I don't know what their point is on that one. But I do see the point of people over here who, you know, some of the foreigners who defend the use of Lao Wei. Does have a sincere form to it. It certainly does, but I would say in general, it's used these days in a lot more in a derogatory sense to suggest otherness, separate, or adding nothing to our community, because foreigners and foreigners have had a presence in China for a very long time now, you know, and it's pretty obvious, you know, it's pretty apparent that there's foreigners in China, and the need to point that out is like, no shit, Charlie. You know, but like, very often they'll just, like, for no reason at all, they'll point you out to their people, and a lot of times the person they're pointing out to has that, like, no shit, Charlie, like, who cares attitude, but they're just trying to, like, sort of whatever, reinforce a derogatory term, you know, which would be the equivalent of using the N-word, or calling somebody a derogatory term for being Chinese in the United States. But anyway, that being said, that's a bit of a tangent here. You know, I can't help but to appreciate everything that I've achieved in China, and having this country giving me the opportunity to do so. I feel like I've created a lot of value for him. You know, there is a downside to it. There's a downside to it in terms of, like, it's taken a lot of my time out of my life, and this is perhaps time I could have been having a kid or raising a child or something more like that. But you know, what I've been doing here is has value too. You know, I just don't know if it's going to translate outside of China. Is my question. But I have, you know, I've created a curriculum at this point. I've created a broad and diverse range of experience and comprehension of the classroom and teaching English. I think I've made some considerable efforts and actually provided some insight into the language itself at times, and gained insight too. You know, it's forced me to consider things like, you know, like just the other day, you know, I was trying to explain where o'clock, how in English terms, I just kind of felt like it's something very obvious in English, like how in English you can't say 12:03, we say 12:03, we don't say 12:03, and but we can say 12:10, 12:11, 12:13, but when you get to 12, from 1 to 9, 12:09, 12:06, when you're talking about time, we say O, just like we say o'clock. Therefore, the idea of using O is to designate time, you know, so you can say O, don't say 0, you know. And this, you know, arose because the Chinese students didn't really understand that, or they didn't sort of see it. And when I looked at it closer, I was like, it's pretty obvious. It's like you say O, because if you said 12:03, it would be a number, and it would be misunderstood or misconstrued. Well, anyway, there's been a lot of that through the ages. So not only have I gained insight into Chinese culture, I've gained insight into the English language and how it developed. So you know, that's been really rewarding, and it's something I appreciate and enjoy, and that's about all I want to say about that for now. Thanks for watching. Please tune in next time and see what else we can discuss here about China, trying to inflect some positivity on my experiences here. I know some of my other videos have probably seemed a little more negative in some of their aspects, but you know, there's a lot of things here that are good and that are enjoyable, and that are, you know, much more deeper than they seem. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate anybody out there watching, anybody listening, and please click like and subscribe, so I kind of get the encouragement to keep this going. And we'll talk to you next time. All right, take it easy. Happy Dragon Boat Festival. It's time for a quick product endorsement. Products I enjoy in China: Hainan coconut milk, something I drink frequently and pretty regularly since I've been in China. What I like to do is I like to mix this, a half a glass of this, with a half a glass of peanut milk, and basically you have Kahlua. So if you're looking for a non-alcoholic sort of version of Kahlua, basically coconut milk and peanut milk does that. And China has a lot of like kind of soy-based milks that are really good, walnut milk and peanut milk, and they like that very smooth kind of flavor in terms of sweetness. They don't like that really sort of tangy sweetness. They like that smooth, mellow kind of sweetness. And so things like coconut milk and peanut milk are very popular here, and they're very popular. It's almost like vanilla. Popular with my taste buds also. Hainan coconut milk, good stuff.